Again, the scriptures present us with something that's not immediately clear about losing your life, losing yourself, and all the different things that are in direct contradiction to the ways of the world. And so that's why initially it was very difficult to understand, especially for the apostles and the disciples. The world is a complicated place. I think we all know that. And there's a lot of things that go on that we don't understand. And so, not to understand it, we try to understand it thinking that somebody does. And this is the quandary of society, so to speak. We hear these words, so also faith of itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Now that's a pretty stark, direct statement. It became the quagmire of the Reformation. But when you look into it, the Reformation was not about theology. It really wasn't even about the Bible. It wasn't even about religion, so to speak. It was about politics. And I hate to say that. But it was a lot of competition between the major political powers in Europe at that time. So religion became a useful weapon to use against your enemy. But that's a long, complicated story, and there's no time for us to go into that. And so, we've heard these statements off and on over the years in religious circles. And it's all coming from what Jesus said. Actions speak louder than words. How many times have we heard that? Actions speak louder than words. And then you will know them by their works. You will know them by their fruits. The fig tree with figs. The fig tree with no figs. That's that whole thing, Jesus dealing with the fig tree. It's in the Bible. And so, anyway, then we have this. And we have this in the readings today. Here we go. It is a tough one. It's a tough one. Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Now, wait just a minute. Nobody wants to do that. Initially. Deny yourself? It's kind of interesting to deny yourself, and then take up your cross. What does that mean? And so it kind of takes a prayer life to try to figure this out, and some time to reflect and pray, and then follow Jesus. Basically what it comes down with is we have to deal with this world just like he did. And it's not easy. We all face challenges. We're not perfect. We got strengths and weaknesses, and Jesus understood that very clearly. But then there's this connection. It's easily missed. This connection is very easily missed. I want to emphasize that. All this is tied together by humility. Humility. Now, what is humility? That's a very interesting kind of question. Because humility could be easily misunderstood. Some people twist it so that a person who's humble doesn't think very highly of themselves. That's the twist. Has nothing to do with that. If you're humble, you don't think very much of yourself. You have a poor self-image. You have a poor, what's that other thing? Self-esteem. So it's weak, being weak. It's so interesting. That's not it at all. But this is what it is. What is humility? And this is the definition when you take a real good look into it. Simply put, humility does not mean thinking less of yourself. Humility means thinking of yourself less. It's kind of, see that little twist there, the whole thing about, this thing. Simply put, humility does not mean thinking less of yourself. Humility means thinking of yourself less, which means you have the ability to recognize there's other people around you. You have the ability to recognize and assess the needs of others so that you can help them. It means that basically you're not self-centered, you're not self-absorbed, you're not selfish. That's what that all means. So that's very interesting. But then we have to think about this. The opposite of humility is pride. Now that's a major, number one capital sin. Pride. This is a stretch here, every single evil in the world is linked to pride. That was the devil's downfall. Satan. Pride. And so anyway, the opposite of humility is pride. Exaltation of the ego. Now there's an interesting word. Ego. That's like a Freudian thing. He did all that super ego stuff, So an ego means a kind of a very strong self-motivation to get what you want by any means possible, to satisfy yourself, and to find shrewd, intelligent, conniving ways to manipulate people to do that, is the power of the ego. And, now I would venture to say, and I may be judgmental here, a lot of celebrities have a pretty big ego, don't you think? I'm not naming names. I'm not naming any names. But, so sometimes success in this world is tied to a very powerful ego. And then you get into the argument that could be good or bad, depends, And so anyway, the ego, exaltation of the ego, it's all about me, And that's pretty interesting, Basically, in one of the most serious mental illnesses that humanity has ever had, ever since the very beginning, is a person who's a psychopath, A psychopath is someone where everything is about them, not anybody else. That's kind of that's kind of a warped understanding, that whole thing. It's all about me, And so when you think about that, there are people out there like that, Maybe we have met some. I hope not. But, they're out there. Many people, now this is interesting. This is in the arena of religion. Let's get back to religion now. It goes like this. Many people want a religion with no trouble. Let's face it, man. There's a lot of trouble in religion. There's no way to get around it. Look at all the denominations. Look at all the religions in the world. And so we have to take that as the reality of what I learned in seminary. It was a new phrase when we learned it. The human condition. Now that was a packed little phrase. The human condition. Having a religion with no trouble. They want a religion that does not involve crucifixion. That's a downer, when you think about Jesus got crucified, and everybody was like, well, that's the end of that story. Everybody's going to go back, to being fishermen, and, was just another guy, came along, nice guy, but he's not here anymore, so we'll go back to our former way of life. But it didn't happen that way. That's what's strange about Christianity, and this whole thing about the enigma of crucifixion. A religion that does not involve crucifixion. Okay, now what about us? What about us? The biggest crucifixion we face is trying to lose our egos in order to serve others in everyday life. Now that's a tall order. Okay, that's a tall order. Now saints do that. Okay, now there may be some saints here, but I'm not naming any names. There may be some saints here. Matter of fact, I do know that there are some saints here. But anyway, that whole sense, lose our egos in order to serve others in everyday life. Crucifying your ego. Crucifying your ego. And then it says this in the Bible. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it. Now, how do you figure that out? That's not an easy thing to wrap your mind around. But you know, it comes down to this very stark reality in our world. In many ways, the world hasn't changed that much because human nature never really changes. It just presents itself in different forms. And so it comes down to this, the reality check. The common human experience is not peace, but warfare within. Now that is pretty heavy when you think about it. Have you ever met someone who gave you the impression they were totally at peace with themselves and others? Now that's a kind of a saint, I would say. But think about it in terms of my personal life or your personal life. Were there ever times when you were divided with yourself, when you were at conflict, where your thoughts and your feelings were somewhat, disorganized? You were going through some kind of trial or tribulation. You had some doubts. You had some challenges. You were at turmoil within yourself. And in some ways, it's kind of part of human nature that when we're in that condition, we don't really want anybody to know about it because they want everything's okay, but it ain't. And so the challenge of that, of course, is part of the human condition to try to come to some kind of sense of peace and harmony within. And of course, that's not easy. To experience peace, not warfare within. It comes down to this, and this is why we're here today. The most important reason why we're here today. We need to be saved. Yeah, we need to be saved. Yeah. All right. We need to be saved, and only Jesus can do that. As Christians, we believe that. And we accept ourselves as Jesus accepts us. And again, what it comes down to for anyone, only He can set us free. Amen. Amen.